to the Next Level Casino Careers Show, a series highlighting industry tips and insights from the best minds in the casino and hospitality industry. Enjoy the show.
Welcome, Afsi Bird. I'm so happy to have you on the show today. I'm glad you could be here with us.
Thank you, Kenji. I'm very excited and honored to be here with you.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time out. I know you've got an incredibly busy schedule. Afsi is the Vice President of Hospitality for Yamava Resort and Casino at San Manuel. So much going on your plate. I think probably the easiest way to start some of these conversations in these podcasts are just kind of giving us a little bit of your origin story. Talk about your career history and how you've gotten to where you are now.
Of course. Again, thank you for having me here. It's excited to be here and have this conversation with you. Well, my story started long time ago when I was born in Iran and raised in Germany. And so when life happened and we had to move to Germany, my parents had a restaurant. And so at the very, very young age, I was involved in a lot of hospitality, task-oriented, items like running the restaurant for my parents, doing the bookkeeping, shopping, and in addition to that, obviously school. And then I decided that after doing that with my parents for a couple of years that I wanted to do something else. So then, not far off from restaurant hospitality, I kind of ventured towards retail. So I was in a retail store and then I became a retail manager. And I think that is kind of like the start of the kind of a hospitality, but a little bit prior to that, I'm the oldest in my family for my siblings, and in my culture, it is all falling on the older one to take care of everyone, to lead everyone, to be responsible for everyone, to make them feel good. And so that kind of then carried through what I was going to do. And then so when we moved to the United States, I started working at the Four Seasons Hotel, and that's how my actually hotel story started.
And you've been to some of the finest hotels in the world. You've worked at some amazing properties along the way. I think part of hospitality, like you mentioned, I think you have to be kind of brought up in it some ways, but in some ways being a good person in hospitality is just innate in who you are. Mm-hmm. Kind of walk through, some of those spots of where you learned to be better at hospitality, where you learned how to be better at service through some of these great experiences you had all over the world at some of the finest properties.
So I think I've been in hospitality for over 30 years. And sometimes I ask that question, like, first of all, why am I doing it? It's 30 years. And we know hospitality is not all that glamour that people think, you work in a hotel, it's glamorous. It's a lot of time commitment, emotional commitment that you have to have in order to, obviously be successful. And after 35 years, I really enjoy to serve people, and where I really learned about servicing people and really taking that to the next level is not necessarily the location or the company. I think when you go through your journey and you help people and you see the results on how you are influencing their life, it could be your internal guests, which are your employees, or external guests. I think that's when something then clicks and you become genuine in what you want, and you want to learn more about it and how to make them feel better and what tools you have to do that. Because I can't just say it's like, okay, Four Seasons or Montage or Independent or Yamava. It's all that experience that kind of brings you to this level where I still love genuinely I care for everyone. And sometimes it's a big emotional task for myself. Like I take it home with me because I couldn't make somebody happy. So I think it's all overall that comes together when and where it clicks for some people.
For sure. As a former hospitality person, and I don't think you ever lose being a hospitality person, by the way, but it has something to do with passion and finding that passion for something you do. I've talked about this on many occasions that, working somewhere is working somewhere, but when you have a passion for what you do, it's no longer part of the job. And how do you help grow that passion amongst your team? Some people are born with it, but some of it is also culturally driven on how you create an amazing environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, in order to have that culture instilled with your team is it's again what I learned. It's to set the example, to be there when they need you. Because when you make your employees feel good, we all know in the hospitality business, what do they say? Make your employees feel good, they make the guests feel good, and it's just that wonderful big circle. So you have to make them feel like what the guest feels when you're listening to them. So you have to be an active listener. You have to take action on them. You have to make sure you're actually listening to what they want. Some people make the mistake and say, working in a hotel, like you give it all away for free. It's like, no, sometimes it's not even giving anything. It's just listening and say, you know what, Mr. Hall, I listened to what you said. We are going to work on that. And maybe it's just that experience. So I think in order to have that culture, you set the example on how you handle your employees and your guests. And then hopefully then they will do it to the next person, and kind of like, the domino effect will just go around.
And a lot of what you talked about was part of the recovery of a guest who may not have had the best experience, but so much of what you do is about making sure that never happens.
Correct.
And the role of every individual within the hospitality team, and how important every role is. How do you push that across to your team to remind them that every single role counts and that they all are part of the bigger picture?
Yeah, absolutely. Because obviously the hotel or the casino or your restaurant or whatever cannot survive with just one person. That's just not going to happen. You need everybody to pitch in, to have the same vision, to have the same mindset, to have the same goal in order for everybody to be successful. And then bottom line, if we're all successful, the guests just felt that success, and then the owners and so on and so forth. But what you have to do, again, just make them walk in those shoes. So if they're walking in and you're paying $2,000 for the guest room, what do you expect? And that's exactly what the guest expects. And again, it just goes back to the training. As you know, we have a great training, and I know hopefully we'll talk about it a little bit, but the hands-on training, being with your staff and showing them what they should be doing. I was fortunate enough in my 35 years, I got a chance to do all positions. I know you like that, me hands-on, all positions. I don't think I have, like obviously casino being my first casino working, I haven't done all casino positions, but having done the hotel positions, it's so much easier to speak that language with your team members and to walk them through. And it just goes back to time. You have to be available for them to give them that time, because it's a lot of time consuming meetings and conversations and training that you have to go through for them to have that mindset on how to handle the guest and making sure to anticipate their needs, right? Because we have information when the guest is coming, we know when they're coming, we know why they're coming, we know how they're coming. So all you have to do is use that to anticipate their needs, and hopefully none of the recovery has to take place.
I love that you talked about training. I promise we will get to that. But one of the things that I want to pull on was you talked about cross-functional skills and being able to understand how all that goes and works together, and how important that piece is. But where you talked about what I think was so important for me was that you've worked in every department. And I remember in my time growing up in hospitality, that was the best way to learn how to be better detail oriented as a leader. How do you work through your teams? How do you teach your teams now at this point? I mean, we're a big place here at Yamava. How do you work them cross-functionally so they can get some of that experience? So many people are so driven in one vertical that they forget that everything else around them is how we get to the bigger picture. How have you been able to do that?
So, and right now, as you mentioned, we're a big company, and I unfortunately don't have the time to work every single position. So obviously,
no one does.
So you hire the right team, right? You hire the right people with the same mindset, the same goal. And then I always say, where we will get the most payoff is your training. Training is the setting the expectation, being clear as what you want, how the training program is laid out, what is the value in that training. I think that is, as long as that is in place, and then the proof is in the pudding to see when you train someone and they follow that and it works, then okay, it's working. But even then, I have meetings with all the new employees. I ask them about the training plan. knowing what you know today, if you had to do it again, what would you change? Because again, they're at the front line and not me. And this is something that comes from like many, many years of experience. And that's what they share. So the training plan becomes somewhat evolving, but in a really good way, because you're getting the front line feedback on how it needs to be done. And I think, again, all of this is the pudding is how you set it together. You're giving clear and regular feedback, and then you just follow up with them, and you're making sure then you take action to whatever feedback they give you.
I love that you have the training as kind of a living document, that it's never set in stone. And I compare it to a car. You can describe how a car drives, how it feels, but you don't know what it's like until you get behind the wheel of it.
Correct.
And I think the fact that you take the time to take that input is really what's going to make that training program so amazing. And Yamava as a whole, we're known in the industry as one of the top service providers. And I think that what we've added as you've been on here is to how do we elevate it to the next level? And we've created something that's called Yamava Service Standards and Yamava Service Excellence there. And I want to kind of hear about that program, because when we talk about how does Yamava set itself apart from others, I think this is a key component that I think everyone should kind of understand.
Yes. Again, here at Yamava, we're very fortunate. We have a lot of amazing team members who've been here for a very, very long time, right? It's because the hotel came later, the casino was already here. So the passion for service already existed. So I was fortunate to walk into a place that the passion was already there, and you don't have to teach anyone that. When I interview people, I really look for the passion. I look in their eyes to see, do they have what it takes to serve every day, every minute of the life? Because the service has to be every day, every interaction, every time. And if you have that, the training is easy. We can show you the technical aspect of what you need to do, but the service has to come from your heart. It has to come from there. And so I was fortunate to already have half of that battle, that a lot of people here already had that. Best in class, best in service was already at the forefront. So it was really just taking those standards, job specific, and breaking them down, as I said earlier, for the training. And what are the service? What do the guests look for? What are the first 5 things you want to do or say when the guest walks in, and put that together? But that was, that took a long time, because we had to get every single department to go through that breakdown of a sequence of service for their area and put that together with the different lens, right? Because now we're looking at not just the casino, but we have this hotel and the spa and additional food and beverage. How do we bring it together to still be very cohesive, best in class, and now break it down, because now we have overnight guests coming and staying here? How will that make a difference? And so after almost a year of going through that, we have now this really amazing Yamava Excellence Manual that obviously we also partnered up with Forbes Travel Guide, so that they're partnered with us to make sure that once we have all of these services in place, that eventually we get the accolades that we deserve.
Yeah, I love where we're going with service. I think that it's hard to start a culture from zero. And so to be able to kind of hit the ground running is really helpful. The tribe has a history in hospitality and from their roots. And so it's evident the way the tribe runs our business and how they lead our business just allows for this great organic way of getting to great service. And you talked about passion for service and finding those people who are passionate about service. Where do you find that? Let's talk about like interviews. Where do you find that? How do you kind of work through that? Because some people don't shine in interviews when they're under pressure or they're under duress. And how do you bring that out in interviews for people? So those of the viewers out there that may be interviewing for a job that really have a great personality but struggle in interviews, how do you bring that out? And what suggestions or tips do you have for them?
Yeah, I think obviously having done this for so long, you can see when somebody's nervous. You can see the signs, and I think this is when you use your emotional, intelligence a little bit, so you can stop for a second and not talk about work, talk about personal life, talk about my son, talk about your kids, talk about what they like to do. And once you see them kind of breaking through that, then I go back and say, okay, so now it's just the two of us. We're going to talk about this. And that is when you can see their passion, right? If they have passion for what they do outside of work, it doesn't matter. It can be anything. You can see that they will have passion to learn a new venture or something new and different. Again, here in this area, we get a lot of great team members that are so passionate that have never worked in a hospitality before. And I like that because I was one of them. Somebody took a chance on me when I moved, 30 some years ago to the United States. I had passion. I wanted to do it, but I had never done hotel business before. So, but then obviously then your work ethic and what you do comes in play. But during the interview, it's really truly making them feel comfortable. I don't know. I bring water, juice, I have candy in my office. I have a bunch of stuff. Like I like food, so I offer food to see if that will work. And most of the time it works. And then we talk about life in general. And then I ask them if they're comfortable, and then we move on.
Food is definitely a way to break the ice. I believe in it. Chocolates for sure. Yes, I think so too. And food is such a big part of hospitality as a whole. And so having to, hear about that is important. And I know you work alongside with the food and beverage team and creating, again, some of the synergies that create memorable experiences. And that's what I wanted to touch on next is about when we talk about great service, we talk about creating memories, essentially. We want our guests to leave here with something that they can look back on for the rest of their life and go, wow, that was something else. And I always talk about an experience I had when I was just a child, and I was visiting a property in Arizona. It was something so simple as the environmental services, the attendant who was cleaning the lobby, took the time to ask my mom if he could take a picture of the three of us, which was me and my sister and my mom. I have very few pictures with my mom and me as a child because she was the one always holding the camera. And that little tiny thing changed the way I look at service and changed the way I looked at that property. And to the point where I would go back to that property, I still go back to that property. It's been a lot of years. Let's say it's been a lot of years. Now, what I want to talk about is creating memories, and what do you do differently to try and create memories, kind of work through that with how you've got your team to kind of focus on something that's beyond just the yes, sir, yes, ma'am, I'm going to do everything that you expect me to do. How do you get them beyond that?
Yeah, and Kenji, thank you for sharing your memory because it's obviously nice to hear other people's memories. And I think in this day, in the hospitality, it's no longer a yes or no, because actually that's not going to get you anywhere. It has to be that active listening that I talk about is so crucial, because you can be walking by someone and they're talking about amongst themselves, as I say, right? They're like, oh my God, I wish I knew where I can get a bottle of water. All you have to do is go get 2 bottles of water and show up and say, would you like the water? And that the moment the guest says, wow, where did that come from? That is a memory you just created. So it's not about giving them anything, upgrading them. It's more about listening to what they want. Similar to your experience, like when I travel, obviously, I don't know, I'm a little bit different. When I travel, I do look for those little things. Just want to see if I, as the guest, will receive the same. And it's about what I share. Like if I call the hotel and say, I'm coming, we're traveling, the 3 of us, and my son's birthday. Now, if they're really interested in me, they would ask me, how old is he? What's his, interest? What did they? So that's step 1, to ask those questions. But step 2, because once you ask me those questions, now I have an expectation. Now I walk away from that phone call thinking, that was interesting. I wonder why they asked how old he is, what he likes. Because now as a hotelier, hospitality person, I'm like, they're going to do something for him. And if I arrive and there is nothing that mentions anything that I shared with the concierge 3 weeks ago, then that's a loss. That's a lost opportunity where they could have, and then if they do, right, that's a win, because we walk in and what is my son going to say? Oh, wow, how did they know? And internally, I'm like, oh my God, that is so amazing. Those are the memories that you take away. So it's like, listen to what the guest wants, but then react. And this is where the genuine interest comes in place. Because I can tell you all day long, hey, Kenji, how are you? How are you? And you're like, oh, I'm great. I'm like, okay, great, thanks. that is different than say, Kenji, how are you today? And you say whatever you say. And for me to repeat that back and say, oh, I'm sorry, or that's great to hear, because you're still going to walk away saying, oh, she cared, she asked. So many times I go into the stores, you know how the salespeople come and they're like, how are you today? And once I said, do you really want to know how I'm doing today? I mean, because that's that genuine interest. That's when you serve from the heart. That's what we're doing here. That's what sets us apart from everyone else. Don't ask the question if you don't want to know. But once you ask the question, why are you coming here? Who are you visiting? Who's traveling with you? All of that is what we call anticipating the guest need. So if you told us you have a dinner reservation at 4:00, it's you and your wife, it's your anniversary, whatever else you shared with us, we put that in place. So when you arrive, we're like, Mr. Hall, your room is ready. Let me take you up to the room. I know you have dinner reservation. Let's get you ready to go. While you're gone, we do turn down. We bring something for you and your wife to enjoy your anniversary. That is anticipating your need and creating those memories.
Yeah, I love that. And I can see the passion that you have for it. That's something that I think shows easily on the screen here. But active listening, so important. But the genuine interest component is also really a secondary piece that I don't think people always get. And I think it can be used across all aspects of business too, not just from a guest to
everywhere
property, but also internally as well. I think when we talk about how do we create a good culture for our teams, that also qualifies in there as, hey, let's have the genuine interest. Let's execute on it. Let's be anticipatory for our team members as well. Can you talk about how the culture you're trying to create since you've been there?
Absolutely. I think one of the simple things is, when you hire someone, going back to the hiring. So you ask them, what's your availability, the usual question, and they tell you, and you choose to hire them. But this is where, again, you need to listen and follow up. If I hired you knowing you're going to school and that's your school schedule, then if the first time I schedule you for that, as the employee, you're going to think, what? I told you I can't work. Why are you scheduling me? But that's the same culture that we can give to our employees saying, hey, Kenji, I know when I hired you, you said you have schools Mondays and Wednesdays. So I made sure your schedule is exactly what you needed to be successful. Obviously, at home and here, personal and professional growth is very important when you do what we do here all day. And so when I do that for one, I'm a very, very consistent person. So if I do it for you, I will do it for everyone. If I don't do it for you, then nobody else will get it. I always say what's good for me, it's good for you. What's good for you, it's good for me. That is the consistency. And, if you talk to my team here, the one thing they can tell you about me, it's the consistency, because that is the key to our success. We have to be consistent in what we provide and what we say and how we say it and it's the same message. One team, one dream, one message.
I love that you talked about your team and being successful. You want to give them the opportunity to be successful. And I want to kind of peel back a little further on that into team development and creating their next steps and helping them see what sometimes they don't see for themselves. Yamava has a really good history as well about promoting internally and doing a lot of development for our teams. You see it with some of the programs that our teams are offering, a human resources team offers, some of the tools that are available. But again, I think part of it comes down to we really do care about the future of our teams, and we really want to do different things to help them develop. Can you talk about some of the mentorship and the development opportunities that you're creating in your area?
Yes, obviously mentorship is very important to me. I was fortunate enough to have a lot of mentors in my life, and I like to take the same kind of a theory and obviously move forward. However, I was mentored, but not one shoe fits all. So you have to listen again to what they want. Not everybody wants to grow. Some people have a different desire. But here, for example, when I moved here, 4 of my team members who were with me at my previous hotels, they moved with me because I do provide those personal and professional growth. One of them being my, admin, for example. She started here as an admin. Then she's going to the Redlands School right now, finishing her master's. At the same time, she's a project manager. She's doing things that she has never done before. So I love to delegate and get a lot of people involved. I know you don't think I delegate, but I do delegate, Kenji. But it's also delegating and still staying in touch and always do the checkpoint. So Dorothy, are you okay with this list? Are you doing okay? Are you completing what you need to do? Do you have time for, to move on or move forward? Where can I help you? What area do you need help in? Because I know what I know for the last, obviously, year and a half working with everybody. And then it also goes back to those open dialogues, having mentorship meetings, not just meeting to just talk about work. Hey, how's your life? What do you want? Where do you see yourself? Because that's something I enjoy when I have those conversations with obviously David or Peter or even you yourself. When I come to you and I'm like, help me, I want to learn more about this. That's to me a growth opportunity when I can learn, when I can, add something new to my toolkit that I have never done before. And so I know that that's not for everyone, but I think what we do here, we have done a lot of internal promotions, specifically in housekeeping, which I'm very proud of. It's a very, very, very physically challenging, demanding job. I did it, and it's not for me. But we have a lot of room attendants that have moved up to be a supervisor or to become an office coordinator or supervisors to become managers. So the growth and the path is there. They also have to want it, and you have to give them immediate and consistent feedback as far as what they're doing good and what still needs to be worked on so they can stay on track.
100%. And I also agree 100% that housekeeping is a ridiculously difficult job. Being a room attendant, I've also done that, and my back and my body was never the same for a week. I don't know how your team continues to provide such amazing service, and I'm just very thankful that they continue to push and do amazing things. And part of that is, hospitality isn't easy, and sometimes it is the tough work. Stewarding teams, housekeeping teams, environmental services, probably some of the toughest jobs. People just don't realize it.
Yep.
I think we've done a really good job trying to reward those team members a little bit so that we can create a great environment for them to continue to perform and proceed. But for people who are in the leadership position, it's also not easy. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of time. I'll go over that again. It is. I've told my kids that, it's not a good idea to jump into the hospitality business unless you are passionate about it. How do you balance that is the real good question. This day and age, it's not necessarily looked upon favorably to work 7 days a week that we probably did when we were growing up in the industry. There were many a time where I went 30 straight days of having to work every day because it was necessary. I think we've done a really good job of preparing for the future, and that we obviously don't want our future leaders to have to go through the same pains that we did. But how did you balance it for yourself, first of all? And how do you do it for your team to ensure that they don't burn out?
Yes. I mean, when I started, it was many, many moons ago, working long days. And I don't know if there was 8 days, that was actually very, applaudable. Like, okay, you're working hard, but we quickly hopefully learned that working long hours doesn't mean you're working hard, but you should be working smarter and not necessarily harder. So for me personally, I'm very lucky and fortunate to have my husband who's also in this business. So he is in the hospitality business, but on the sales and marketing side. So that I think about this all the time. That is the only way we could have survived this marriage, because I did work a lot of hours and long days, when I was with other companies. And if he wasn't in the same business, I don't think he would understand why I can't come home for dinner at 8:00 at night, or why I have to go to work. But then also along the line, then we learned to be more proactive while you're at work and be productive. And so because I don't like that. Like, I don't want to be here 7 days. Not that I don't enjoy people, but if I hire the right person and I train them to do their job and I empower them to do their job, I shouldn't have to be here. And that will trickle all the way down. So what I do is I do balance my life pretty well, knock on wood, these days. And I'm home when I need to be. And obviously my son is a little bit older now, so he could care less if I go home or not. But my husband does. Thank you. But, again, I know when I was younger, I used to look at my manager, what time that person would go home. because then I would gauge like, oh, can I go? Is he still here? Is he gone? What should I do? And so I want to make sure that that is not here. So I tell everyone, okay, like I'm going home now. Have a good night, everybody, so they can go home. Or, you know, working 5 days, making sure that they have their 2 days off, even if I have to jump in and help them out or whatever we have to do. So I'm fortunate that we were able to do that here, to give everybody their time that they need to be there, to be with their families, so they recharge. Because again, a lot of people charge differently. So if that is how you need to charge, or to go hike or bike or, you know, work out or whatever you have to do so you can come back fresh and ready to go, that is the time we should put in, because that's more productive than making everybody work 7 days. And then that absolutely, I always say after the 8 hour, maybe 10 hours, you're not that productive anymore. Like, it's just not. So what's the point of sitting here? Like, just go home and recharge.
Yeah, I think that sometimes just the ownership component of leaders is the toughest part that gets in their ways, because the area that they want to succeed in is an area they want to own, and they want to make sure that everything goes right. They're a little bit of perfectionists. They struggle at delegating. And you touched on a couple of points there about being proactive is super important, but also delegating. And you mentioned a little bit, I struggle at it too as well. And I think probably growing up in the industry, initially it was very difficult for you, especially because I know how you like to have ownership over your area, making sure that everything goes perfectly, especially in the environment with the service excellence that you guys are creating. It's hard to like let go of that. What tips do you have for folks that are trying to learn how to delegate better? How do you help them in that process?
I think this is where I tell myself, listen, it's going to be okay. I ask the questions. Is the hotel burning? No. God forbid nobody, thank God nobody's dying. No. Is it something we can tackle the next day? Yes, without jeopardizing, obviously, anything major. And if those three are good, like, yes, we're good, then let it go. Because then you can teach them, like, to be more proactive when it's more important, than not to just here for 10 hours just trying to finish a project that we have to do, but it's not even due tomorrow, but they want to like beat their own timeline. It's all about like them or ourselves, to making sure we're controlling ourselves. And so for me, it's just like making sure that nothing like, we're still perfect. I want to hope so. We still deliver the best service. We are training, we're delegating, we're empowering, we're motivating to do what they need to do. Now, if it's something that it's urgent and it's going to break the camel's back, then yes, we're all sitting here, we're all doing what we need to do. But I think to give them that opportunity that it's okay. And if you tell me in advance you didn't meet your deadline, again, it's nothing urgent, so then we can talk about it. But I just don't feel that culture that I was raised in, where you have to finish it that day because they give it to you that day so you can prove to them you can do it. I don't think that's necessary.
And you also mentioned a little bit there about the opportunity to fail as well, and utilizing that as a learning experience.
So I have a favorite quote for you.
Tell me
that. And it is from it's from Winston Churchill. So I might be choppy about it, but it's about that success is not necessarily the final, right? And then if you fail is not, it's not fatal, but it's how you come back from that is what makes you stronger. So just because the project was given to me today and I finished it today, that doesn't mean I'm successful. And if I turn it in and there was a mistake or I have to redo it, that doesn't mean I'm a failure. It's I tried, I did my best, and now I'm going to learn. I'm going to do it one more time, and now it's going to be perfect. But I thought about that because it's so important for the young leaders to understand mistake happens. I make mistakes all day long. As long as I learn from it, and it's nothing, obviously mistakes cannot be fatal. Like they're not fatal, hopefully, the mistakes that we're making. But as long as I'm learning from it, that's the recovery. That's the same thing we talked about it earlier with the guest. Mistake will happen, but how we recover with the guest, with ourselves, and with our team member is really what will set us apart.
And oftentimes the most loyal guests that you have are the ones that encountered a problem.
Absolutely. I still do to this day from my previous life, people that they were ready to walk out, and this is why I met them, because they were ready to walk out. They didn't have it, and then now we are best friends because we recovered and we made sure we stay consistent with the recovery, and still to this day we're friends.
I think that's a valuable lesson for all team members as well, and anyone in hospitality, essentially, that, you know, things are never going to be perfect, and that it's how you recover that makes a big difference. One thing that I wanted to talk about, you talked a little bit about how the industry has changed over the course of years, and just we talked about it ourselves, about our own working styles and how many hours you were supposed to be here when you outworking your manager, and all of those things that existed in the past. What other things have changed in the world of hospitality that have kind of been some really large steps that you've seen along the way in your career?
I think most recently, obviously, pandemic changed the whole world. just most recent.
Absolutely.
But prior to that, I think is hospitality, even like from the size of the guest rooms or the amenities in the guest room. You know, when I started with them, it was very important to have this desk, this size, this chair. But now it's not, because now it's all about the comfort of the guest. So now we listen to our guests. What do they want? Why do they want it? And I think that has shifted in what even sometimes the guests are not used to. When they walk into a guest room, they're like, wait, why is that not here anymore? So you have to remind them, oh, this is for your convenience. This is how we have set it up for you. So I think a lot of it, like the product has changed. A lot of hotels are green now, which when I started, there was nothing green about anything. Right? It's
full Kleenex box every time, no matter what. 2 Kleenex out, gone, new Kleenex box in.
Exactly. So I think, you know, listening to your consumers and changing like products in the room, the green aspect has changed. And then obviously we know the automation, digital, all of that has taken over a lot more than when I started. It was all writing it down. We used to do the manager's handover in those red big books sitting there saying overnight handover, Afsi to date, time, initial.
Gives me the chills thinking about that. Yes, I remember those. The famous pass down books.
Exactly. And obviously with the pandemic, most recently, just even like the desire to work in hospitality, or how the guests choose destinations and why they go there. So it is evolving, and still to this day, we're trying to really understand what changes can still to come so we can stay ahead of the curve.
I think even the service needs of a guest have changed along the way. And from when I started in the industry as well, is people had a different expectation of what great service was.
Yes.
And the experience and the, you know, social media has also probably changed some of that too, where people see something and I want an Instagrammable moment. This is what I want to have. I want to have this so the world can see how great my day has been. And their expectation is a little bit differently there.
Yeah, for sure, which actually makes me laugh sometimes, because, you know, they want an Instagrammable moment, but they don't even know why they're doing it, just because everybody else is doing it. They think they're influencers now. You see everybody, no matter where you go, everybody's taking pictures of the dishes. Like, I want to ask them, like, what are you going to do with that? Like, what is happening? But like before, it didn't exist. And, you know, it had to be a press release that was like put on this paper. So it was all paper, when now it's all digital.
Yeah, I have a picture of dinner from last night, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Most of the time it's because I want to show one of the chefs. I want to show them. I was like, can you do this? This is amazing. And
yes.
Can you teach me how to do it is the other part of it. One thing that we like to do in this podcast, we like to talk about the bigger picture. And so we do is we grab a couple of photos or articles or things that we want to hear your take on it. Some of it is with you and some of it's with other areas in the industry. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show this lovely picture here. I'm not even going to introduce it. I'm going to leave this one all to you to talk about this great photo.
Yes, obviously, this was just recently at the Forbes Travel Guide Summit that was held in Las Vegas. And we were there to be acknowledged as we got the Forbes accolades. So we're a proud 5-star spa resort, and we are a proud 4-star hotel and the Pines restaurant. If I may just show you my star.
Be proud of that. The spa team, unbelievable. The Serrano Spa, they're fantastic.
And so this picture is obviously, I don't know, from my right, you see David Kopaz, our Chief Operating Officer, Hospitality. Then the lady in red, she's our spa manager. I don't know who that lady is next to her with the blonde hair.
Look good there.
Thank you. Then we have our tribal, obviously, guest, our chairwoman that is right next to me. So was honored to be there. And then we have 2 guests down. We have our in-room dining manager, and then we have Peter Arceo, our general manager for the casino. That moment, it was the most incredible, amazing, like you want to pinch yourself moment, because as I said, 35 years or whatever in this hospitality, to achieve all of these stars, accolades in your first year of opening, it was amazing. And this is definitely the hard work and the passion that all of our team members put together to achieve this accomplishment. So I have been to these Forbes summits before, obviously in my past life, but never have I been to it on my first year. And to have a 5-star and a 4-star. And for those who know this casino, you know how busy it is. You know how active the floors are. For us to still achieve that, to be at the top of the top of the top when it comes to service, and to be acknowledged by Forbes, and to stand right next to a chairwoman, I want to die. That was the most amazing moment for me, accomplished moment. You know, one of the interview questions I ask is like, what has been your most accomplished moment in your life? So if I ever get interviewed, this is accomplished moment, to be there, to be honored to be there, obviously to represent our company, our enterprise, San Manuel, you know, and the Yamava team. It was amazing. So I was honored to even be there.
You might have stole one of my future questions. I'm just kidding. But when you look at it, I love this picture. I love that the tribal involvement with Chairwoman Valbuena and our other tribal leader, Eddie Duro, there with our Chief of Staff, Liberty. Like the fact that they took the time out to make sure they went there to show their support for this program is amazing. I know how busy they are with their own work as tribal leaders, but to understand why this is part of who they are as well, and to support us within the casino. I love having them as kind of our guideposts there. They continue to lead us as a tribe, and to have leaders like this that will take the time to make sure they go there. And the fact is they are 5-star worthy in how they treat us. And I quite honestly, I can't get over, like I've said it many a time, there's nowhere else I'd rather work than here. And it's because of a picture like this, where we celebrate just amazing excellence and have the backing and the support of the tribe.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing.
So let's see. I think we got another picture, or at least it's an article that's out there. So the Wall Street Journal is talking about the robot and concierge programming, and how artificial intelligence is going to change our stay. So can you talk about how this next step is affecting hospitality, and maybe how you balance it with creating a great experience while still remaining relevant and technologically advanced?
Obviously, as I said, one of the big changes in the past has been the digital and the technology, and I think it will continue to be. I think it will be a topic for everybody to review and see, you know, how we can stay relevant, because that is the world now that we live in. It's all about technology. You know, like for example, what it says here, the hotel concierge, you know, texting, and to be a robot as a best in class, you always want to make sure you give your guests the option to choose from. You know, obviously you have to have your traditional concierge, you have to have your traditional front desk, but you can still text and allow the guest to choose. So when I recently was traveling, you know, I checked in somewhere and I immediately got a text and said, welcome, here we are for you if you need to. And so I was like, oh, that's easy. And I start texting, and everything I needed that visit, it was via text. But I also kind of felt like, oh, where's that personal interaction? Like, what happened? So even when they texted me, I would still go to the concierge and I would still ask them. So I got a text that this is the restaurant I should go to. What do you think? What is your favorite dish on that? Because I think that's the one small component that I don't think we have perfected yet, but I'm sure it will be perfected in the future, that you can ask those very personal, suggestions from a concierge, because obviously the concierge is where people go when you want a personal recommendation. But I don't think the technology, the robots will go away. If anything, they will get better and better, and there will be obviously working side by side with us to make sure that the guest has the option to have the traditional service, but yet also the technology for some people that would rather just text and not talk to anyone.
I think the world has kind of shifted a little bit. The newer generation that's coming up is much more fluent with texting and apps. And so their interaction with humans isn't always something they want. It's an introvert's dream sometimes to be able to have this option available to them. And
this is why maybe I was comfortable just texting.
It's funny. I was in Hollywood last night and I was talking to my concierge on a text for quite a large portion of my trip while I was there. And when I came downstairs, I recognized that I missed having that interaction. And so I made sure to find one of their leaders to help guide me around for the rest of the trip. And I think it's important to allow that option out there because you don't want to lose that human touch.
Correct. That's what I said.
The other piece of AI that's out there is that the ability to upsell or to kind of, again, separate yourself is gone in a text message.
But I'm sure they will perfect that.
Someday, I think AI will perfect that. And I think that one thing that I've seen with Yamava, and I'm very excited about on the hospitality side with David and your teams, is that we're using technology as a way to assist team members so that they can continue to service guests and spend more time doing that. I believe one of the key ones that we have is there's a survey robot in the restaurant, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you know the stats on it there, but it's a ridiculous amount of number of miles it saves and number of pounds that a busser doesn't have to carry.
Right, exactly. And we got a feedback from team members how happy they're because they didn't have to carry that huge pile of dirty dishes back and forth and the amount of walks that they were doing. Instead, they have more time to actually engage with our guests at the tables and to talk to them, to connect with them. So that has been a huge success in our food and beverage.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at some notes. I think it was 2,000 pounds a day and over 3 miles of walking where they can have the robot come to them, load up the dishes, and then send them to the dish room. And that you're right, being able to spend a little more time talking to our guests and taking care of them, I think is, again, part of the how do we use technology to enhance service as opposed to using it to replace.
Exactly.
So I know you've talked about a lot of the family time, and I'm sure you watched your son play a lot of ball over the course of years. Is that your favorite way of disconnecting, or what other ways do you use to disconnect from here?
Yes, I love spending just even if I just go sit down and watch him play, I think it just calms me down. I enjoy it. I think because maybe it's because I have one kid. That's all I like to do right now. And as I said, he's older, he's going to move out and then I'm left with nothing. So I don't know what to do. But I do like the outdoor lifestyle. And so I had the obviously opportunity to live in some of the most beautiful places such as Wyoming and Park City. And so we do go as a family and we love to ski and do snowshoeing and, just being outside in the fresh air, just to even hiking. I'm not a big camper, so I don't camp, but my husband does. So by default, I have to go and enjoy that. But just to being outdoor, it really helps in my opinion, your mental mindset, to just listen to the birds and sit down, have a cup of coffee under the sun, or even when it's cold. I know a lot of people don't like to be outside. I like the fresh air. It just cleans your mind. But I also love to watch a lot of movies. I love we have movie nights. Well, when my son was younger, he would sit with us, but now it's just myself and sometimes my husband. We watch a lot of movies. We love to travel. I mean, if I could travel all day, every day, I travel all day, every day. Being on the plane all day doesn't bother me. I love to learn about a lot of different culture. So again, I was born in Iran, so I'm Persian, but I love that Middle Eastern and the culture, and just different type of culture. My husband is British, so we travel a lot. That's how I disconnect.
You have a lot of good. I love that you have a lot of avenues that you can do that. I believe in hiking 100% and being in the outdoors when it's not super, super cold. I like just a nice crisp day. You also talked about all the travel and just, connecting and learning cultures of different areas, but you also have an incredible amount of learnings with the number of languages that you speak as well. Like, you're someone who truly gets immersed, I think, when you talk about a culture.
Yes, my language. I speak Farsi,
German,
and I try English.
just we all try English, I think, sometimes.
Yes.
So you talked about the movies and movie night. I'm now intrigued. I'm intrigued about like movies that you find. What are your favorite movies? Where do you go for that?
So my top one is Godfather.
Can't miss on that.
Love Godfather. I can watch it like if I have if it's a glooming day outside, whatever, raining, I can watch Godfather all day, every day, and I will never be tired of it. Then I like Forrest Gump. I just like that movie. I think it says a lot about life when you're listening and watching it. Another one would be Good Will Hunting. Like, I like that movie. I think that's enough for now. Those are my top ones, kind of.
Forrest Gump is such a great message, I think. The whole
box of chocolate. Like, I will never. The box of chocolate is a box of chocolate.
It's an incredible metaphor, I think. And you just talked about it at the very beginning of our conversation about bringing chocolates out to get people comfortable. It's a very good full circle moment. For others that are watching this podcast and they're trying to figure out tools to succeed in the future, I know you've read a lot of books in your time too, and a lot of leadership books, as many of us have, to try and pick out some parts that are important. Do you have a favorite leadership book in mind, and maybe a piece of it that's really helped you along the way?
Yes, well, I have a lot of them. I don't know if you can see them on the back, but there's a lot of them. But one that stands out because I really enjoy, obviously I enjoy them all, but this one stands out. It's the 7 Habits of an Effective Leader. And I think what I really love about it, I don't know what section it is, but I think it's the win-win, where you talk about like the end goal and then you work towards it. I think for me, that's very important. That's just how my mind works. When I've been given a project, a subject, or something, I need to have the end goal, and then I will kind of work towards it. Obviously, we're all flexible. I can do it even if I don't have the end goal. But that really resonated with me when I was reading it, and I really was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like, why I think that way once I see it in paper, why people think that way. So that really resonated with me. But there's a lot of, obviously, books out there. I think it all depends on who you are and what you're looking for. Like, there's so many books out there when it comes to leadership, that you can read.
Yeah, that Stephen Covey book that you talk about is great. I always look at like Simon Sinek as well as part of it. Like, know the why. It's the same thing. Know the end goal. Know the why. It's very important in how you work your way through different areas. Right. I'm also a believer in reading a lot of different books too. I think never settling to read a book and say, this is exactly how I have to do it. I think you take parts of a lot of different books, and that's how you create a good leadership style. Similarly, I think you take that with your previous leaders. You take some of the way that they lead. There are things that I think you've learned probably in your past that have come directly from people that you've worked with before. And there are probably things that you've decided you will never do again because of people that you've worked for. How do you have specific mentors in mind that you go, this is why I do things this way, or to the reverse, you don't have to mention them, this is why I don't do things this way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, throughout those 30 plus years, I've been fortunate to work for a lot of great leaders, and there's always some, when you look at somebody that I respect and admire and I want to learn from, even those people have traits that you're like, I'm not going to do that when I get to that role or whatever. There's a lot of days. I don't think there's a day actually where I don't think about my mentors that have allowed me to grow and get to this level by really truly giving me feedback when I even didn't want feedback. Feedback to me, it's a gift. I always tell people feedback is a gift. Sometimes you want a gift, sometimes you don't. Christmas, you open up a box and it's socks. You're like, okay, thanks. But even then, you should look at those socks and say, can I still wear them or not? That's how you deal with feedback. But yeah, there's a lot of great leaders, and there's a lot of traits that I would not want to do, but there's a lot of traits that I admire, and I still try to emulate every day to still be like them, because they're just great people in my opinion.
I think feedback is so important. And if you are a person who's wanting to be a leader, asking for feedback is so important. People don't know what your intention is if you don't ask, and you don't ask for ways to how to get better. But equally important is, as a leader, it is important to give honest feedback to your team members. And when I say honest feedback, I'm not saying be overly harsh. I'm saying you need to give them the tools to help them succeed. You need to tell them when they're falling behind and they aren't doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, but give them tools to how they can get to where they want to get to. Too oftentimes, it's the easy answer is when someone says, how did you do on that? And your leader goes, oh, you did great. Even knowing that it wasn't great, giving them the honest approach to go, here are some things that you did really well, and here are some things I think you can work on. I think
Absolutely.
those are different pieces.
I definitely agree. And I try to practice that all day. That kind of goes back to what we started off with, the whole service to be genuine, right? So if I'd say, Kenji, how you doing today? Say, oh, great. They're like, oh, great, walk away. Or truly wanted to understand. And if you are, when we talked about development, if I have people that I'm developing, I have to give them the honest feedback. And to your point, not to be harsh, but to set measurable goals for them and to keep them on track. You have to be able to give them you have to be transparent with them. You don't want them to make them feel like, oh my God, you're over here, when actually you're not. You still have areas to work on. So, but also feedback has to be immediate. In my opinion, it has to be immediate. It has to be, consistent. If you come to me and say, Afsi, I want to give you feedback for something you did 3 weeks ago, I'm sorry, I don't even remember what I had for breakfast this morning, let alone what I did 3 weeks ago. So being on timely feedback and honest and transparency is very important.
Well, I want to thank you for spending some time with us today. We are near the end of our time, but we like to close these podcasts out with 3 tips. And so the 3 tips I'd like to ask you is, if you could give people 3 tips on how to take their career to the next level, what 3 tips would that be?
3 tips. I think always stay flexible, because things do change. Continue being a mentor and ask for mentorship for yourself. Otherwise, you will not grow. And then maybe the 3rd, take risks, take risks and try to be the best you can, and ask for forgiveness later. Just kidding.
Calculated risks. I always say that. Don't take wild, crazy, jump off the cliff risks. Jump off the cliff if you have something holding you, or a parachute. But I think I love that you brought those up. I think there are so many great conversation pieces that you brought out in this last hour. And I want to thank you for that. I also want to congratulate you on the Star Awards. Unbelievable job for us to be able to get 5-star spa, 4 stars in the resort, 4 stars in the Pines in the first year. Again, unprecedented in our industry to get that kind of accolades right off the bat. So you should be very proud of that.
Thank you. I'm proud of our team. Thank you so much, Kenji.
Well, thank you again. Appreciate your time today. And thanks for joining us on the podcast. And we look forward to many other great podcasts in the future.
Thank you, Kenji. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Check out more episodes on nextlevelcasinocareers.com.